지아야.
나 오늘 늦게 공부해야 돼. 로스쿨 시험 얼마 안 남았.
알았어. 널 사랑했던 순간을 기억할게. 내가 널 보고 아무 말 없이 고통을 혼자 간직한 채 집으로 가서 정리하는 거잖아.
This drama starring Park Bo-gum is bound to captivate our eyes, as it tells the powerful story of a poor young man struggling to rise from rock bottom after being abandoned by his family, friends, and even the woman he loved, all because he was weak and broke. No one believed in him, but he never stopped believing in himself. So, what makes this story so captivating? Without further ado, here's the full recap. The story begins by introducing a poor man named Hye Jun. He has to give up his youth by working full days just to earn money. Hye Jun lives under constant pressure from his family, especially his father, who keeps forcing him to join the military, believing it's the only way Hye Jun could become somewhat useful. He is often compared to his friend, Hye Hyo, who has already found success as a famous actor.
가슴이 턱턱 막혀. 아버지 닮아.
됐어. 너도 그만 자.
Despite constantly being compared to his friend, Hye Jun remains loyal to his friendship with Hye Hyo. He also has another close friend named Ji Yu, and the three of them have been inseparable since their elementary school days. Hye Hyo has even helped Hye Jun apply for a movie audition, supporting his dream. The audition would be his last chance if he failed. Hye Jun had no choice but to follow his parents' wishes and enlist in the military. Using his connections as an actor, Hye Hyo invited Hye Jun to work as a model to help him earn some extra income. But unexpectedly, at that very place, Hye Jun met a girl whose way of speaking brought him comfort and joy, something he desperately needed while dealing with all the pressure in his life. The girl's name was Jung Ha, thanks to her warm and caring nature. It was easy for her to grow closer to Hye Jun, and for the first time in his life, Hye Jun felt comfortable enough to open up to a woman. However, in the midst of that brief moment of happiness, Hye Hyo had to deliver heartbreaking news. The results of the film audition had been announced, and sadly, Hye Jun did not pass the casting. Upon hearing the news, Hye Jun walked away with a heavy heart, overwhelmed by sadness. Because his greatest fear had now come true, his family would hate him even more. When he got home, he immediately told them the bad news. Upon hearing it, his father felt satisfied, believing that a failure like Hye Jun didn't deserve a stroke of luck in the first place. Amid all the insults thrown at him by his family, Hye Jun's grandfather was the only one who truly loved him. He was also the only person who believed that Hye Jun would one day achieve his dreams. The next day, Hye Jun met with his friend Minji. That was when Minji revealed a painful truth. Hye Jun had actually passed the audition, but he was suddenly replaced by Hye Hyo, simply because Hye Hyo was more popular than him. Hearing that painful truth, Hye Jun fell silent. He couldn't believe that the very friend who had always supported him was the one who had taken away his dream. With no one left to confide in, Hye Jun reached out to Jung Ha and asked to meet her. In that moment, all the sadness he had been carrying seemed to fade away. He found himself slightly mesmerized by Jung Ha's beauty and the warmth she radiated. Unfortunately, that precious moment didn't last long, as the rain suddenly began to fall and ruined the atmosphere. Jung Ha had always hated the rain to her. It made her feel lonely and forgotten. But unexpectedly, Hye Jun's response touched her heart in a way she didn't see coming. Hye Jun softly said that from now on, he would always call Jung Ha whenever it rains, so that she would never have to feel lonely again. It turned out that Hye Jun wasn't the only one who had feelings for Jung Ha. Hye Hyo had also secretly admired her for a long time. He even made Jung Ha his personal makeup artist, just so he could be closer to her. One day, while Hye Hyo was with her at the salon, Hye Jun unexpectedly showed up to see Jung Ha as well. But when Hye Jun arrived, he was faced with a painful truth. Starting today, Jung Ha had been assigned by her boss to be Hye Hyo's personal assistant, responsible for his appearance during film shoots. In that moment, Hye Jun began to feel like everything was becoming impossible for him. From his dreams to his love life, it seemed that Hye Hyo was the one who always ended up winning it all. Even though the truth was hard to accept, Hye Jun tried his best not to hate Hye Hyo. But deep down, he couldn't hold back the emotions building inside him. After taking some time to think things through, he returned to Jung Ha's salon, this time, to ask her to cut his hair. Hye Jun had made up his mind. He was going to enlist in the military. The next day, we see Mingi receiving good news from the director who had held the audition a few days earlier. Thanks to her persistence, the director finally agreed to offer Hye Jun a small role. Upon hearing the news, Hye Jun was overwhelmed with joy. He felt incredibly grateful to Minji for believing in him and for not giving up on his dream. Hye Jun immediately shared the good news. His mother, who had always fully supported him, was overjoyed. But his father reacted differently. He was shocked and angry upon hearing that his son would be acting in a movie. HP the next day, Hye Jun also shared the news with Jun Ha. Jun Ha was naturally happy, knowing that Hye Jun wouldn't be leaving for military service, which meant they could spend more time together. Jun Ha said it somewhat absent-mindedly, but Hye Jun took it as a confession. Jun Ha even invited him to drink in celebration of his success. In that moment, Jun Ha's innocence made Hye Jun fall for him even more. On their way home, at a street corner, Jun Ha, still half drunk, made a heartfelt confession. That until now, Jun Ha had never been in a relationship, and he really wanted to place his trust in someone who truly loved him sincerely. Hearing that confession, Hye Jun immediately realized that it was a natural sign meant for him. The next day, it was told that Hye Jun would start his first shoot as an actor. Before that, Minji took Hye Jun to a salon to improve his appearance. Coincidentally, the salon they visited was the same place where Jun Ha worked. Of course, both Jun Ha and Hye Jun didn't waste the chance to grow even closer. But unexpectedly, Hye Hyo also came to the salon that day. There, Hye Hyo began to notice the growing closeness between Hye Jun and Jun Ha. During his first shoot, Hye Jun had to play the role of a wealthy and rather cruel mafia boss. He performed exceptionally well. While the filming was in progress, he intentionally improvised a line that wasn't in the original script. Thanks to this bold move, the director in charge of the shoot was impressed by Hye Jun's ability to stand out even more than the lead actor. The lead actor in the film was named Park No-ha. He harbored a bit of resentment toward Hye Jun, thinking that Hye Jun was just trying to seek attention from the director. Meanwhile, we are shown Jun Ha, who has now officially become Hye Hyo's personal assistant. He is very happy with his new job and is deeply grateful, because thanks to Hye Hyo, he will be able to get closer to people in the entertainment industry. As a token of his gratitude, Jun Ha offered Hye Hyo a favor that he could return anytime. It is told that even though Hye Jun had started to achieve a part of his dreams, it didn't necessarily make his family happy. At that time, he was still facing pressure and hurtful words, especially from his father, who still refused to acknowledge Hye Jun's success. Even when his grandfather tried to defend him, his father went as far as acting disrespectfully, simply because he didn't want anyone in the family to take Hye Jun's side. On the second day of filming, Hye Jun got a small injury on his forehead. Jun Ha immediately stepped in to treat the wound. Once again, rain was falling around them. At that moment, Hye Jun could no longer hold back his feelings for Jun Ha, and finally confessed his affection. However, Jun Ha responded with a joke. That night, Hye Jun stopped by Jun Ha's house. There, Hye Jun asked again about the answer to his earlier confession. Jun Ha could only stay silent, caught off guard by how fast everything was happening. He intended to gently turn Hye Jun down without hurting his feelings, but unexpectedly, he slipped up and accidentally admitted that he also had feelings for Hye Jun.
그럼 좋아의 다음엔
아니야, 나도 좋아는 해.
연애. 아니야, 나야 해주면 고맙지.
그럼 할래.
하고 싶으면 해.
The next day, Jun Ha received a promotion from his boss. Hye Hyo was the first person to congratulate him on his success. But unexpectedly, at that very moment, Jun Ha revealed that he and Hye Jun were now officially in a relationship. Upon hearing that, a small part of Hye Hyo's heart quietly cried. In that moment, he had to hide his sadness behind a bitter smile, one that could mask his pain so Jun Ha wouldn't notice. To avoid raising suspicion that he also had feelings for Jun Ha, Hye Hyo pretended to support Jun Ha's relationship with Hye Jun. He even offered to give Jun Ha a ride so he wouldn't be late for his meeting with Hye Jun. After that, Hye Hyo could only quietly reflect on his own fate. But he had made up his mind he wouldn't give Jun Ha up so easily. He was ready to sacrifice their friendship for the sake of Jun Ha, whom he now saw as both his first and last love. At that time, Jun Ha went to see Hye Jun, who was in the middle of a photo shoot. His grandfather was trying his luck in the modeling world for the elderly. And Hye Jun felt like he was being reborn, because thanks to Jun Ha, he had finally experienced a true sense of family. As the night grew later, the two of them went to watch a movie together. They purposely chose a late-night show so there wouldn't be many people around, allowing them to freely share their love. Meanwhile, at the same time, Hye Jun's grandfather kept practicing to become a model, determined not to disappoint Hye Jun. However, due to his age, he became too exhausted and collapsed, causing great concern among the entire family. At that moment, Hye Jun's father saw the grandfather's modeling application and became furious, blaming Hye Jun for involving his grandfather in what he saw as a foolish dream that Hye Jun had been chasing all along. His father, furious and still seeing Hye Jun as worthless, ended up slapping him. The pain wasn't just physical, it crushed Hye Jun emotionally. He was heartbroken, realizing just how deep his father's hatred ran, to the point of treating him that cruelly. With no room of his own to pour out his emotions, Hye Jun could only cry inside the old car that had become his silent companion through all his struggles. But even after shedding his tears, the pain didn't fade. The weight in his heart remained. He then called Jun Ha and asked him to come with him to the park. There, Hye Jun tried to forget all his pain by singing. In that quiet moment, Jun Ha finally saw just how heavy the life Hye Jun had been carrying alone truly was. Overwhelmed by emotion, Jun Ha leaned in and kissed him. The next day, Jun Ha went to meet Hye Hyo again to join him on set. That day, Hye Hyo had planned to finally make his move and win Jun Ha's attention. But after finishing a series of shoots that night, he realized Jun Ha had left without saying a word. Panic set in. He rushed out to find him, and when he finally caught up at a street corner, Hye Hyo was hit with a bitter truth. Jun Ha greeted him with nothing but coldness. A deep sadness filled Hye Hyo's heart, because all he could do was love from a distance, knowing he could never truly have Jun Ha by his side. Deep down, he never truly wanted to betray his friend. But what could he do? He had already been blinded by his love for Jun Ha. At the same time, thanks to his performance in his first film, Hye Jun received a promising offer to play the lead role in a mini-series. Excited, he immediately met with Jun Ha to share the good news. And of course, as his partner, Jun Ha was genuinely happy for him, promising to stand by his side and support him as he proved he was worthy of a successful life. And so, filming for the miniseries began. The drama starred the famous actress Hye Jun, a seasoned, well-respected senior in the industry. Hye Jun, still new to the spotlight, made several mistakes while reading his lines, especially when pronouncing medical terms. But fortunately, Hye Jun was able to gracefully cover up his slip-ups, helping the scenes move forward smoothly. But that wasn't all. Hye Jun suddenly began trying to grow closer to Hye Jun. She even asked him to call her by her real name. hoping it would help them connect more easily. Hearing that, Hye Jun couldn't help but wonder, could it be that Lee Eunicio was starting to like him? Days passed, and despite the challenges, Hye Jun successfully completed filming the entire miniseries. The result was outstanding. His performance moved the audience, especially in the scenes where his character melted the heart of Lee Eunicio. The drama, which told the story of a romantic bond between a senior and a junior, quickly went viral. Hye Jun's name suddenly flooded the media, marking his rise in the spotlight. And now, he had gained something only true stars have: a loyal, passionate fan base of his own. To celebrate his success, all of Hye Jun's friends, including Hye, gathered for a dinner. In that moment, Hye had to hide the deep pain in his heart as he watched the sweet and romantic connection between Hye Jun and Jun Ha. But then, during the dinner, Hye suddenly received a message. Someone else wanted to join them. That person was Kim Ji-ar, Hye Jun's ex-girlfriend. Once upon a time, their love story was warm and full of hope. They had even talked about marriage, dreaming of a future together. But one day, everything shattered. Hye Jun caught Kim Ji-ah cheating right in front of his eyes. She was with another man, someone richer, more successful than Hye Jun used to be.
널 사랑했던 순간은 기억할게. 내가 널 보고 아무 말 없.
Back to the present. Even though Jie's return could have been the perfect chance for her to ruin the relationship between Hye Jun and Jun Ha, she just couldn't bring herself to do it. She knew it would hurt Jun Ha deeply. That's why she decided to meet Jie outside instead. There, Hye stopped Jie from seeing Hye Jun, telling her that someone's heart was bound to get hurt. Seeing the expression on Hye's face, Jie suddenly realized Hye had fallen for her own best friend's boyfriend. Even after being warned, she refused to forgive Jie, that is Lee. She even told her to leave immediately, before something worse could happen. Fortunately, Jun Ha was in the restroom at that moment, which spared his heart. He didn't get the chance to see Hye Jun's ex, who had returned. Jun Ha and Hye Jun then spent the rest of that beautiful day together, enjoying each other's company in peace and happiness. The two of them even began to see the rain as a moment to strengthen their bond. In that moment, Jun Ha felt truly happy. He could hardly believe that he had finally found a relationship that made his youth feel worthwhile. But behind that happiness, Hye Jun was quietly filled with fear, because now, the shadow of her ex had returned to her life. Hye Jun's family had finally acknowledged his success, but things were different with his father, who still seemed a bit awkward. Whether it was out of dislike or embarrassment, no one could really tell. One thing was clear: the relationship between them hadn't fully healed. Later that night, just like in most love stories, Jun Ha and Hye Jun exchanged messages to ease the longing between them. These weren't just dry, motionless texts, they were heartfelt, keeping the two of them awake, unaware that the night had grown so late. The next morning, Hye Jun's father and older brother, who usually only had critical comments, were left speechless when Hye Jun was picked up in a car reserved for movie stars. He was heading to his very first fan meeting event. The event was also attended by Park Do-ha and Hye. Park Do-ha, who harbored resentment toward Hye Jun, occasionally tried to tarnish his name, but despite that, Hye Jun remained completely unfazed. However, when the reporters focused more on him than on Park Do-ha and Hye, it became clear that what Park Do-ha felt was also felt by Hye. Even so, she tried her best not to hate her own friend. After the event ended, Hye Jun was set to star in his new drama, this time titled The Kingdom Era. One day, amid his hectic filming schedule, Jie suddenly came to see him again. She said she only wanted to rebuild a good friendship, and admitted feeling guilty for the pain she had caused him. But from Hye Jun's side, no matter how hard Jie tried, he knew he would never be able to forgive her. What made it worse was that he was utterly disgusted. His ex suddenly came back into his life now that he had become successful. At the same time, he also felt a strange sense of gratitude toward Ji. Her betrayal had become the very fuel that pushed Hye Jun to chase his dreams even harder. For him, The greatest motivation came from the harshest words spoken by the one he loved the most. Then, we're shown Hye Hyo's mother, who is visibly upset by Hye Jun's rising success. While Hye Hyo repeatedly says that he doesn't hate Hye Jun, in fact, he's proud that his own friend is finally achieving his dreams. His mother feels quite the opposite. She even went as far as making a secret deal with Park Do-ha to work together in order to bring down Hye Jun's popularity. Hearing about that plan, Hye Hyo was left frustrated. On one hand, he was truly happy for Hye Jun's success, but deep down, he couldn't deny the fear of being overshadowed by him. To ease his mind, he went to visit Jun Ha at the salon where Jun Ha worked. Jun Ha's warm treatment truly managed to change his mood. At that moment, Hye Hyo felt genuinely at peace just being near and talking with Jun Ha. From time to time, he would ask Jun Ha what he thought of him. But Jun Ha didn't realize it, and continued to ignore all the little efforts Hye Hyo had been making. Hye Hyo felt deeply hurt because all his efforts went unnoticed by Jun Ha. At that moment, he remembered the debt of gratitude Jun Ha once spoke of. Hye Hyo then tried to collect on that debt, but sadly, Jun Ha couldn't repay it right now, because that very night, Hye Jun was already waiting for him at Jun Ha's house. Hearing that Hye Jun was now at Jun Ha's house made Hye Hyo's heart burn even more. He kept insisting that Jun Ha repay his debt of gratitude right then and there, but Jun Ha continued to refuse, even promising to double that debt as long as he was allowed to go home that night. Hye Hyo could only mourn his fate, as it seemed both his dreams and his love were now turning in Hye Jun's favor. Meanwhile at home, the two lovers who were madly in love grew even more romantic, and Hye Jun's playful and humorous nature made Jun Ha feel even more grateful to have a love like his. After spending time together and easing their longing, Jun Ha walked Hye Jun to the bus stop. On the way, Jun Ha said that he planned to quit his job at the salon, so he could finally be free from his responsibilities as Hye Hyo's personal assistant. Because even though Hye Jun believed that Hye Hyo would never betray him, Jun Ha still wanted to protect their friendship, and with that in mind, he made up his mind he would open his own salon. Days passed by, and Hye Jun's historical drama was finally released. The show received high ratings, and now Hye Jun had even been nominated for an award. It was revealed that Park Do-ha and Hye Hyo were also nominated in the same category, which was for Most Popular New Actor, before the event began. Hye Hyo asked Hye Jun that no matter who won, they wouldn't let it come between their friendship. And so, the award ceremony began. Hye Jun's entire family was present at the event, and when the winner was officially announced, it was none other than Hye Jun who took home the title of Most Popular Newcomer. In his acceptance speech, Hye Jun expressed his deep gratitude to everyone who had supported him. In his speech, Hye Jun sincerely thanked the people who had supported him. First, he expressed his gratitude to his grandfather, then to his mother, and to Minji for being the best manager he could ever ask for. But in that speech, Hye Jun didn't mention his father's name at all, whether it was intentional or simply forgotten. One thing was certain, it left his father deeply hurt. He felt invisible, as if he was no longer seen as a father. On the other side, Hye Hyo couldn't hide his sadness after being defeated by Hye Jun, but he tried his best to accept the reality and face it with strength. That night, when Hye Jun finally turned on his phone, he was shocked to see a missed call from someone named Jang Charlie. Jang Charlie was undeniably a part of Hye Jun's past, and seeing that missed call instantly clouded his mind, making him forget about Jun Ha, who had been waiting at the exit for 3 long hours that night. At that very moment, Hye Hyo once again asked Jun Ha to repay his debt of gratitude, and in that moment, Jun Ha realized that Hye Hyo was truly hurting. He also assumed that Hye Jun would be busy celebrating his victory with his family, so without thinking too much, he agreed to Hye Hyo's request. Meanwhile, Hye Jun kept calling him, wanting to celebrate his victory with Jun Ha alone, but all of his calls went unanswered. as Jun Ha was now happily spending time with Hye Hyo. The next day, the Korean public was shaken by shocking news. Charlie had been found dead by suicide in his own home. It was revealed that Charlie Jang was a world-renowned designer. His name already known across the globe, but behind his fame, he had a hidden side. He was attracted to the same gender, and now, his death was being linked to a rumored romantic relationship with Hye Jun. Because of that news, the Korean public began to believe that Hye Jun was someone who loved the same gender, and many of them didn't want an actor who was gay to be part of the film industry. As a result, Hye Chun's career was now hanging by a thread. The news quickly reached Hye Chun's family, and all of them were shocked by the rumors. Even his father, as harsh as he had always been, couldn't bear to see his son become the target of online bullying, especially being labeled as someone who loved the same gender. The only way to clear the false rumors was to reveal the relationship between Jun Ha and Hye Jun. Minji tried to explain this to Jun Ha, and fortunately, Jun Ha was willing to do whatever it took, as long as it could help Hye Jun. But Hye Jun didn't feel the same. He rejected the idea completely, because no matter what, he never wanted to make their relationship public. He knew that if he did, Jun Ha would end up facing even more hatred from people. Minji could only surrender to the situation. There was nothing else she could do to prove that Hye Jun wasn't someone who loved the same gender. At that moment, Hye Hyo came and told him that he had already asked Kim Ji-ae, Hye Chun's ex-girlfriend, to speak publicly and confirm that she once dated Hye Jun. Hye Hyo did this without asking for Hye Chun's permission first, because he knew that if he did, Hye Jun would most likely never allow it. Hye Jun was furious with Hye Hyo, but instead of backing down, Hye Hyo snapped back at him. He had done everything he could to help, yet this was how Hye Jun responded. Deep down, Hye Hyo knew that Hye Jun wasn't just angry because of what he did. He was angry because he didn't want Jun Ha to find out that he once had an ex-girlfriend. But that was the only way, compared to publicly revealing Hye Jun and Jun Ha's relationship. It was the lesser sacrifice. After breaking up with Hye Jun, Ji-ae continued her education and eventually became a successful lawyer. With her mastery of words, she managed to skillfully shut down the rumors spreading among the public. In that moment, Hye Jun finally chose to make peace. He agreed to reopen his friendship with Ji-ae, but that very decision would soon become a double-edged sword, casting a shadow over his relationship with Jun Ha in the days to come. On the other side, Jun Ha was watching Ji-ae's broadcast, where she openly admitted to being Hye Chun's ex-girlfriend. In that moment, for the very first time, Jun Ha felt truly heartbroken and jealous. Because until now, Hye Jun had never told him that he once had someone before. As if he knew exactly what was about to happen, that night Hye Jun came to comfort Jun Ha. He explained everything with honesty, and thankfully, Jun Ha's maturity kept their relationship intact. After all the scandals and problems had settled, Hye Jun finally returned to filming his latest drama. This time it was unlike any of his previous works, because now he would be acting alongside Hye Jun. Ha continued to work as his assistant, still trying to repay his debt of gratitude to Hye Hyo. In the middle of filming, Minji received a phone call from a reporter, someone who had begun to suspect the relationship between Jun Ha and Hye Jun. The reporter warned that if the rumors turned out to be true, it could destroy Hye Chun's entire career, as his fans would never accept it. Hearing that conversation, Jun Ha suddenly felt that maybe his presence was nothing more than a burden to Hye Chun's career. To keep Hye Chun's mind at ease, Minji decided to send him to Singapore to meet with his international fans. While Hye Jun was abroad, Jun Ha began to feel a kind of loneliness he had never experienced before. In the midst of his sadness and loneliness, Hye Hyo suddenly came to see him. Before their conversation even began, Hye Jun, who had just arrived in Singapore, called Jun Ha. At that moment, Hye Jun said he really needed someone to be with him. But since Hye Hyo was at the house, Jun Ha turned him down, saying his parents were visiting. Hye Hyo's sudden visit wasn't random. It was actually Jun Ha who had asked him to come, because he wanted to ask one thing clearly, whether or not Hye Hyo had feelings for him. Later, when he returned home, Hye Hyo was forced to face a bitter truth. His social media followers had been manipulated by his own mother, who had secretly been buying followers for him. It broke his heart, realizing once again how deeply his mother interfered in his life. He felt disappointed and hurt by her constant need to be in control, always believing she knew what was best. With nowhere else to find peace, Hye Hyo left and quietly begged Jun Ha to stay with him. Not a single word came out of Hye Hyo's mouth, because for him, simply being by Jun Ha's side was enough to calm his heart. To prevent the media from spreading false stories freely, Mingi decided to hire a lawyer. But both Mingi and Hye Jun, who had just returned from Singapore, were shocked when they found out that the lawyer they would be working with was none other than Kim Ji. Meanwhile, Hye Jun's grandfather finally began his debut as an elderly model, accompanied by Hye Jun's father, who acted as both his assistant and manager. Back at home, Hye Jun's father asked why his father was suddenly working as a model at his age. The grandfather gently replied that it was his way of making up for the past, because it was his poverty that had led to his son living a difficult and painful life. After being apart for so long, Hye Jun was finally able to see Jun Ha again. In that moment, Jun Ha opened up and admitted how hard it had been for him to be away from Hye Jun. Hye Jun felt guilty for letting Jun Ha go through those days alone, but thankfully, Jun Ha was understanding. He never asked Hye Jun to always be there. He just needed to be reminded that he mattered. What he truly wanted was for Hye Jun to stay focused on protecting the career he had worked so hard to build. Even though it had already been denied, the news about Charlie resurfaced. It was revealed that before taking his own life, Charlie Jung had written a final message for Hye Jun. The content of that message remains unknown, but its very existence strongly suggests that there was a special connection between Charlie Jung and Hye Jun. Minji's manager was once again hounded by reporters eager to get a statement. This time, the situation was hard to deny unless the contents of the message were made public immediately. While they were in the middle of planning a strategy with GA, Jun Ha suddenly showed up. For the first time, he found out that GA had been working as Hye Jun's lawyer all along. Jun Ha went home with a heart in complete turmoil. He desperately wanted to call Hye Jun, but he just couldn't bring himself to do it. Mingi urged Hye Jun to reveal the contents of the message. After reading it, Mingi strongly wanted to make it public. However, Hye Jun refused, citing humanitarian reasons. He wanted to protect Charlie Jung's honor as a designer. No one knows for sure what the message says, but one thing is certain: it's something worth paying attention to. At that moment, Mingi warned Hye Jun to be cautious, or better yet, to avoid meeting Jun Ha for the time being, as their connection had already started to attract attention. That night, Hye Jun went to see Hye Hyo. There, Hye Hyo finally opened up about her feelings. She confessed that she had been struggling with a deep fear of being overshadowed by Hye Jun, even though she was the one who had always supported him in chasing his dreams. Since Hye Jun was currently keeping his distance from Jun Ha, he planned to give a small gift to cheer him up. He decided to give a pair of shoes that he had beautifully hand-painted himself. The next day, upon arriving at Minji's office, Hye Jun was shocked to find Jun Ha already waiting for him. In that moment, Jun Ha unexpectedly said that he wanted them to break up. He explained that it was a decision he had thought through carefully, especially now that their relationship had become known to the public. And with that, the film comes to an end. When I watched Hye Jun's story, I felt it deeply, the way he was constantly looked down on by his own family, being told he had no future, even though he was doing everything he could to make it happen. What touched me most was how he worked day and night, not to show off, but to prove that his life was worth fighting for. And in my opinion, The most powerful part of this drama is how it shows that success isn't just about fame, but about holding on when the world wants to see you fail. I think a lot of us are like Hye Jun, unseen, underestimated, but quietly planting seeds of hope. ... So, if you're out there fighting silently, don't worry, you're not alone. I've been there too. And this drama reminded me every struggle, no matter how small, still matters.